Right. Well, we're 10 or 15 minutes later. It took a while for Adobe to go through the entire text recognition process through all 100 articles that I've got in this file. But after that's occurred, we have text that is then renderable or readable, if you like. So if you recall the last time we started here, it could read quandary in the heading here, but it couldn't read quandary in the title. And now you'll see it can pull up quandary. So again, we're sure that the text is readable. I'm just looking at the word science here in the small print as well, just to appease the skeptics. And sure enough, we can see science here as well. So we've got text that is searchable. And this is exciting because it means that, again, I've got text the size of half or two-thirds the size of the Emperor of All Maladies. That's more than 100,000 words of text here, which means we've got a lot of data to play with. And what we're interested in here is sort of taking a bird's eye view of this media literature on cancer or carcinogens in food, in this case, that we can sort of start to parse through in the early 80s what material, what was going on, what were people talking about. We can start to look at some of those trends and themes with this material. Now, before we can start to do sort of the basic data visualization, we do need to do a little bit of tidying and cleaning up of things. So the first step here is to copy the text. Select all the text again. So what we want to do is select all, and then we're going to copy it into a Word document. The reason we're going to do that is there's some things here that are going to skew our data a little bit. You'll notice again that every article has this heading with the New York Times and the ProQuest historical newspapers, and also then reproduced with permission of the copyright owner, or further reproduction prohibited without permission. If that's on every single article, it means that we've got over 100 reproduction or permission or copyright, which are going to show up in every single newspaper, in our word cloud quite substantially. And the same goes for ProQuest historical newspapers and things, and we don't want that. It's noise. It's going to get in the way of what we're interested in, which is the historical content of the primary source journalism from the time. Okay, so I've copied and pasted it into a Word document. I'm using Pages, but for all intents and purposes it's the same. And the next step is really very simply a matter of just sort of going through the text. I'm searching for material here. And that's not what I was trying to do. Searching for material, so I'll copy that and I'll type it in here to be found. It finds that, and just leaving the replace blank and replacing all, that'll go through all of them. It means you don't have to do this article by article. You can just get rid of all of them in one fell swoop. Okay, we'll do the same with further reproduction, prohibited without permission. We'll put that in there. Sure enough, it shows up. We're going to replace all. Same again with the New York Times current file, or 1923 to current file. And we'll replace that. And ProQuest historical newspapers, we can get rid of all that too, because we don't really want that. And there's a danger here, there's a problem, because New York Times obviously is going to show up, and more to the point, New York is going to show up in the text fairly regularly, because this is, the New York Times is the paper of record in the United States and is the national paper in many respects, but at the same time, a lot of the content is local. So we are going to see New York showing up fairly frequently, but we don't need to exacerbate that with New York Times at the beginning and things. There's a little bit more tidying we can do. Sometimes I like to get rid of Mr. MR. I can't think of too many words that would have MR beside them in the text. There's a danger, though, that if you start radically sort of trying to cut out little bits and pieces, I started getting rid of the doctor. You'll find that doctor shows up in a lot of sort of the medical and scientific literature. The problem with that then is I found last term with another project that a number of assignments sort of wound up, or a number of word clouds showed up with the word ugh, and you can sort of imagine how drug, missing the DR, for example, doesn't become terribly useful. So we can cope with a little bit of noise. But the Mr., if you want MR, if you want to get rid of that, you may find that shows up fairly frequently, as you'll see in a moment in my word cloud. Okay, so let me just close this window and I'll pull up another one. So here's my text. It's all cleaned up. I've got 112,021 words. So again, it's a substantial amount of text. I think if we were doing this on a much more serious level, every student would be working with 10 or 12 times that amount of that kind of word count. But this is enough for our purposes. And again, now that we're paired up, if you imagine pairing the literature, the material that you have with your group mates, and I would urge you not to just sort of dispose of these files. Please hold on to these files. They can be a useful tool going forward with the collaborative work. Somebody may decide, hey, let's put all of our files together and sort of see what the word cloud looks like, and I think that's kind of interesting as well. So hold on to that, but I've got a lot of text. The next step again, and I appreciate that we're sort of doing the same thing over and over again here. I'm going to select all the text again, and this can take a second because it is a lot of text. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. This is, you know, it's not wildly readable, but you and I aren't trying to read it. We're going to get some software to do that for us. So I've selected all of it. I'm going to copy all of it, and then I'm going to go to, I'm getting ahead of myself here, to Wordle.net. Wordle is one of any number of word cloud generators online. I like this one. It's free, it's easy to use, it gets rid of the ands and the thes for you, so it's tidy, and there are some aesthetic qualities that I like about it as well. So having selected all my text and copied all my text, the next step is to then paste it into Wordle. Okay, so I've now got my 112,000 words showing up in Wordle here. If you scan through it, you're going to see all kinds of gobbledygook in places where the optical character recognition software didn't pick up words perfectly clearly. That's okay. For the most part, this is pretty accurate. I'm looking at sort of contarnina, and I'm assuming this is probably a contaminated. It doesn't matter. We'll cope. Again, I think the weight of material will tidy up a lot of this, some of the quirks that way. From there, we're just going to hit go, and it'll take a second, but it will create a word cloud. And Wordle creates them randomly, and I don't need to tell you that this one that came up here is a bit of an eyesore. We need to do a bit of just tidying to make this a more usable and useful piece of data for us. Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is change the color. I recommend putting them all in black and white. I think it's just easier to read, and especially if you're thinking about printing them or sort of sharing them back and forth. Something that's in a single color is probably easier. We need to do something about this font, with apologies to fans of medieval literature and text. That's going to be hard to read. It's going to be a bit of a nightmare. There are any number of fonts that work kind of nicely. This one I just know is okay. It looks all right and is much easier to read. A couple more things. First of all, I like the rounder edges as opposed to sort of the straighter edges. I find sort of the boxy ones a little less exciting or a little less stimulating. So, but again, whatever your tastes are, that's fine. I do recommend making all the text horizontal. It just makes it that much easier to read and that much easier to find stuff, and more to the point, easier to also to compare the size of words, because what a word cloud is really reflecting the frequency of words in that body of text. So you can see that cancer and new and years and food are words that are coming up very, very frequently in those 100 articles that I downloaded. And that's really what we're trying to do, is we're capturing a snapshot of that kind of frequency. And what we're going to do is compare and contrast word clouds across a number of different students' word clouds over an extended period of time. So that if you're looking at 1 or 2 or 5 years or something in terms of your search, your group mates are looking on either side of you, and we've got sort of a decade or so of material to work with. But the students in your tutorial outside of your group are working on the same topic again. So we could have as much as sort of 70 or 80 year sort of visual history of the New York Times reporting on a particular topic. And being able to compare and contrast, I think, is really neat. The other layout thing I would point out, and this one's already doing it, is preferring alphabetical order. A lot of them are going to show up with words sort of in a random array. And again, if we're trying to compare over a bunch of word clouds, putting them in alphabetical order probably is a bit of a time-saving device, but also I think helps us to sort of start to look for trends or anomalies in the literature. What I like about word clouds is 2 things. One, it tells us what kinds of words are most frequently used. It also tells us, not for nothing, and I think this is kind of interesting, what words aren't there. And sometimes you need to sort of infer or imagine the kinds of words you expected to see, looking at carcinogens in food in the early 1980s, for example. Maybe that requires a bit of reading elsewhere. And it's interesting to see what the word clouds don't tell us as well. So that requires a little bit of preparation and thought. So, final step then. for this suite or this trilogy of Martin Scorsese-esque instructional videos, you want to make a screen capture or a capture just of your word cloud. So again, Shift and Command or Control 4, depending on whether you're on a Mac or a PC. I'm just going to take a photograph of that. It's going to disappear into my Dropbox, or it'll be saved wherever you save images, and that's what you're going to put up on Trello.com. You'll be getting an email about how to sign up for Trello and getting that information to your TA so that we can be moving very quickly towards getting these up by February 10th. The idea is that if these are all up on February 10th, if every student has submitted their word cloud by then, it means that week in tutorials we can sit down and start to look at what we've got and get the ball rolling then before the reading break on this first collaborative newspaper assignment. Okay, so ProQuest Historical Newspapers, we're doing some database searching and collecting of relevant material, and you will be assigned terms and date parameters, so don't go start on your own until you receive those. From there, you will download the articles into Adobe. You will render them readable by your computer, by your word processors and things. You will do a tiny bit of scrubbing, run them over to Wordle.net, create a word cloud, and then post that up on Trello.com, and then we're ready to go with the next stage of the assignment. Okay, so I hope this clarifies a number of questions. I will also be talking about this on Thursday in lecture, but hopefully we're smooth sailing from here on out. Okay, very good.